The world has gone mad and the system is broken. A New Zealand housing perspective. We recently received 2 recommendations in the space of a couple of days to read the billionaire Ray Dalio's new article, The World Has Gone Mad and the System is Broken. When I read it for the first time, I was for the most part immediately in agreement and appreciated the succinct breakdown of the logic, and it affirmed what others are saying about the system is broken, provided you're aware of these underlying factors included in Dalio's article. If we take a moment to set the scene, and then we will highlight some of the content of Ray Dalio's article and its impact on the New Zealand home ownership. Most business owners take their lead from the media, who take their lead from the bank's economists, with the exception of a very few courageous investigative reporters. Our media share content with other international media who take their lead from their bank's economists. All roads lead back to the banks. The banker to the banks is the Federal Reserve Bank in each country. The Treasury is an executive government department who are responsible for managing national finances, voted in by the people who are affected by the media who vote the government into power. Lastly, banks are commercial entities who are motivated by profit, and their best customers are small and medium business owners and Joe Public, who they make the most money from, because these customers are not in a position of strength to negotiate. So with the above in mind, if you read The World Has Gone Mad and the System is Broken, you'll have a better insight. You should read the whole post, but here are some quick excerpts. Point number 1, money is free for those who are credit worthy, because the investors who are giving it to them are willing to get back less than they give. More specifically, investors lending to those who are credit worthy will accept very low or negative interest rates and won't require having their principal paid back for the foreseeable future. They are doing this because they have an enormous amount of money to invest that has been and continues to be pushed on them by central banks that are buying financial assets in their futile attempts to push economic activity and inflation up. So my comment is, please read our previous article, Better 3 hours too soon than a minute too late, she said, about the Fed's response to buy more assets. Bullet point number 2 from Ray Dalio's article. Because investors have so much money to invest, and because of past success stories of stocks of revolutionary technology companies doing so well, more companies than at any time since the dot-com bubble don't have to make profits or even have clear paths to making profits to sell their stock, because they can instead sell their dreams to those investors who are flush with money and borrowing power. My comment is Uber is an example. Please check the link to see the most recent significant losses that Uber has incurred to date. At the same time, bullet point number 3, at the same time, large government deficits exist and will almost certainly increase substantially, which will require huge amounts of more debt to be sold by governments. Amounts that cannot be naturally be absorbed without driving up interest rates at a time when an interest rate rise will be devastating for markets and economies because the world is so leveraged long. Bullet point number 4. Pension and healthcare liability payments will increasingly be coming due, while many of those who are obligated to pay them don't have enough money to meet their obligations. Bullet point number 5. Since there isn't enough money to fund these pension and healthcare obligations, there will likely be an ugly battle to determine how much of the gap will be bridged by 1, cutting benefits, 2, raising taxes, and 3, printing money, which could have to be done at the federal level and passed to those at the state level who need it. This will exacerbate the wealth gap battle. While none of these three paths are good, printing money is the easiest path because it is the most hidden way of creating a wealth transfer, and it tends to make asset prices rise. Bullet point number 6. At the same time as money is essentially free for those who have money and creditworthiness, it is essentially unavailable to those who don't have money and creditworthiness, which contributes to the rising wealth opportunity and political gaps. Point number 7. Because the trickle-down process of having money at the top trickled down to the workers and others by improving their earnings and creditworthiness is not working, the system of making capitalism work well for most people is broken. So how does the above impact New Zealand's home ownership? The reason we are focused within the New Zealand context on home ownership is simply because this is where Kiwis and Kiwi business owners invest their wealth. The good news is we have some time, not much, to adjust and prepare, because when the recession does start to tighten in New Zealand, we won't feel the effects immediately. Commentators are suggesting we are unlikely to experience a short, sharp and shocking correction as experienced previously with recessions, but more of a slow restriction and a tightening in cash that will have no immediate overnight effect on housing. Due to the above, Dalio comment that governments will print more money to deal with more and more government debt, the consequences of printing more money will cause inflationary pressures, driving living expenses up. Increased living expenses will make it more difficult to debt service the home loan, irrespective of whether the interest rates remain static. Unfortunately, due to the corporate focus on profits, wages have not risen commensurate to the living expenses, making New Zealand home ownership affordability one of the worst in the Western world. Annually, public sector wage inflation was 3% and private sector wage inflation was 2.3%. This has been distorted in recent times by the success of the public sector negotiations. Most leveraged homeowners will be looking at the interest rates closely, and because these will remain relatively unchanged, they'll feel confident about the future. Herein lies the risk. Homeowners will consequently continue to invest blindly in residential housing at the limit of what they can afford. But due to the inflationary lag, the pressure to debt service will get more and more difficult as time goes by. In the past, you could invest at any time in housing, and if you bought at the top of the market, if you simply took a medium-term view, the market eventually caught up and you started to improve the equity in your property. However, what would your scenario look like if this recession perpetuates longer than the previous 10-year economic cycles? As per the head of the IMF, commenting on the next recession could be up to a generation, 30 years in duration. What would the impact be to you and your family with an increase in supply of properties as good as yours going onto the market at the same time? As an aside, and an interesting consequence of baby boomers passing on their estimated 30 trillion family wealth transfer to the millennial generation, is forecast to take place by 2030, which is 30 years away. Funny that. But that's for another article. It appears that the wealthy are hedging their risks and liquidating their assets into cash to be better prepared to take advantage of improved value buying opportunities. When driving around our neighborhood, I often wonder how fortunate some will be because their homes have just recently sold and they may not even be aware of the pending financial climate and its consequences on home ownership. Thank you.